Okay. So we're in the middle of this deep dive into the 5 levels of the soul. And we spoke about nefesh, we spoke about ruach, we spoke about chaya, right? Sorry, we spoke about neshama, we spoke about chaya. 4 levels. Now we're going to start talking about the 5th level of the soul, the highest level of the soul, and that is called YECHIDAH. YECHIDAH is also known as Makif Rachok. Makif, which is M-A-K-I-F, Rachok, which is R-A-C-H-O-K, Makif Rachok, which is the farther or the furthest removed. The furthest removed enveloping energy is called Makif Rachok. And we know that the 5th level of the soul, the level of YECHIDAH, is the furthest removed from our natural state. YECHIDAH is also known, YECHIDAH translates as unique oneness. YECHIDAH is the part of our soul that is rooted, that is unified within the absolute oneness of the Creator. It's the apex of our soul's potential. It's the pure transcendental part of our being. It's a deep place within us. It's beyond duality. It's beyond fragmentation, the splinteredness of our world. It's not affected by our world. It has nothing to do with our world. It is an absolute one with God, with the Creator. Now, although YECHIDAH is linked with the ineffable and cannot be quantified or contextualized, what can be said is that it's part of the self that remains consistent throughout our life. So often we spend our lives, and I've used this analogy before, we spend our lives in the waves of the ocean. The moods, the whims, the changes. We call those the waves of the ocean. YECHIDAH is the deepest waters beneath. They're unchanged, sometimes unmoving. So deep within our being, there's a part of us that is unwavering. It's consistent throughout our entire life. And because of that, YECHIDAH cannot ever truly be understood, because YECHIDAH is the understander. The understander can never truly be understood. It can't be observed, because YECHIDAH is the observer. YECHIDAH can't even be experienced, because YECHIDAH is the experiencer. Let me take another perspective. I know this is very difficult because it's quite theoretical, because it's so far removed from us. Let's take a look at the 4th level again, the one that we spoke about last week, the level of chaya. The level of chaya is the infinite part of the self. It's the observer. It's the experiencer. It's the emptiness upon which the fullness of life is superimposed. So in that sense, if you look at that as the fourth level, YECHIDAH, which is the fifth level, is the ultimate context that simultaneously contains the finite and the infinite. It's the fullness and the emptiness, and including them all within a singular frame. So let's go back. On the level of nefesh, on the level of ruach, on the level of neshama, on these first three levels, every person is unique and distinct. We all have a particular purpose. We have a particular soul mission. None of us that are living in this world today have the same purpose, and no one that has lived and no one that will live has the same purpose as me and you. That's only on the level of nefesh, ruach, and neshama. On the level of chaya, chaya is the backdrop of life. So on the level of chaya, there's only oneness. But from the perspective of this fifth level, from the perspective of YECHIDAH, unity, multiplicity, everything and nothing, unity and infinity, they're included and they're integrated into a whole larger than the sum of its parts. They're integrated into a whole that is larger than the sum of its parts. So let's just go over this a second. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama is the finite self. The first three levels of the soul, they represent the finite self. Chaya is the infinite self. YECHIDAH is beyond and inclusive of both the infinite and the finite. So with the fourth level, with Chaya, we are separating the infinite and the finite. But the truth is, the infinite and the finite are truly one. They're truly united. So on the level of YECHIDAH, it's both. It's inclusive. YECHIDAH is our fullest reality, comprised of our potential prior to birth and the details and experiences of our lives lived out to their fullest, and our infinite, unchanging observation of self. Does anyone have an analogy for this or a question, please?
I have a question, not an analogy. Somewhere you had said that the chaya is the knower and the see, like, okay, if we were aware of knowing something or having the wisdom or the understander or the witness, but in YECHIDAH is the biggest difference is that we don't know. It's happening to us, but because of the oneness, we don't really even know that it's happening. Am I understanding that correct? Or am I even explaining?
We don't know on a finite level.
Okay, right.
If we don't know from a nefesh, ruach, and neshama state, you could tap into the YECHIDAH state. There's a way to do it. But we don't know. If you want to start tapping into it from a finite level, you're mixing apples and oranges.
Okay. Last week, when you said, oh, this is a cliffhanger for next week. Well, who could remember my question from last week that I was going to ask? That was the cliffhanger, but I think it had something to do with prophecy.
Yes.
I think it had to do with if you kind of know something's going to happen, not think, but you just know, and you're in that state. whether it's experiential, whether it's spiritual. Would that put you in a YECHIDAH state?
If you have trained yourself to understand and experience the YECHIDAH state. You see, a lot of people think that their intuition is YECHIDAH. Intuition can also be nefesh. So we have to be careful. It's not the intuition's fault. It's our state's fault and where we're focusing. And that was your question last week about intuition. Jill.
I think my question might have been answered because you said YECHIDAH is something we can't know. And I'm assuming we can't know it with our intellect, with our mind. But then, as Cheryl said, and you said, it's like, because I'm not one for just blindly believing something. Mm-hmm. So I guess, as you said, we've got to train, or we've got to be familiar with how to access, I guess, the YECHIDAH state. Is that, I'm trying to take mind and thoughts out of it.
Right. So I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. I'm hoping I'll have enough time today to finish explaining it. But understand that it's very difficult to wrap our minds around this because there's nothing, it's deeper, its source is not within the intellect or the emotions. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the pure soul state.
Yeah, so I guess I'm assuming or thinking it's it's an experience. It's something where there's no real words for it.
Well, let's see, with the knowledge that you have from classes before, if you can kind of put yourself in a place to be able to understand this. I'm going to try to go through it as best I can.
Thank you.
YECHIDAH. Jill's question: to live in a state of YECHIDAH. To live in a state of YECHIDAH is to live in perfect, symmetrical harmony with the Creator and the creation. Perfect, symmetrical harmony. Interpersonally, this means being able to see another human, another person, another creation for who they truly are by being able to move beyond the trivial prejudices, the biases, by observing, to look at someone and observe their core. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who was this illustrious 18th century Hasidic Rebbe, known as the Alter Rebbe. We've spoken about him, his magnum opus, the Tanya. We've spoken about it. He once acknowledged that when he looks at someone, he sees them as they exist as a primordial person. This is a very important word within Kabbalah. We're going to call it, it is called Adam Kadmon. Adam Kadmon, primordial person. So what the Alter Rebbe was saying is that he was able to observe people the way they actually are, in pristine potential and rooted within their primordial source. To understand YECHIDAH, we have to now understand what is the Adam Kadmon, what is the primordial person, the primordial human. The Adam Kadmon, the primordial human, is a cumulative context that contains all 5 levels of the soul as one, including all of reality from infinity to finitude, as well as the idea of ayin, of emptiness, of nothingness. Ayin is the potential for everything, right? Nothing is the potential for everything, or the potential for anything. And yesh is the opposite of ayin, which is something, or observable existence. Very important concept that I'm throwing out here. We have ayin, which is nothingness, which is the potential for everything, and yesh, observable existence, something, or somethingness. Ayin and yesh. The word Adam, translated as human, comes from the word domeh. Domeh means in the image or in the likeness. God said, let us create the human in our image, in our likeness, in Bereshit, in Genesis. So domeh means likeness or in our image. It's also rooted in the word dimyon, which means imagination. So kadmon means primary or primordial. The Adam kadmon is the primordial likeness or the primordial image. It represents the world of divine desire and will. The original desire, the original primordial will of all creation, is the desire and will of the infinite, of the unified creator, to create and enter into a relationship with an apparently, and I'm using air quotes here, an apparently finite other. An infinite creator wants a relationship with me and you, with a finite other. The Adam Kadmon is the way reality exists in the perfect imagination of the creator. The Adam Kadmon is the Adam and Eve before they ate from the tree of knowledge. It's the way we and all of reality exist in the perfect imagination of the dream of the infinite one. In that reality, in that primordial state, we are all perfect. And it's important to note that we have that level of perfection within us. Perfection is the way that we exist within Adam Kadmon, within the primordial human. In the divine imagination, the creator envisions and imagines us living out our utmost physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual potential in this world. That is what the creator wants from us. Let me think of a metaphor, because I know this is very theoretical. Let's say a person is having a strong desire to buy and to build a beautiful home. And when she closes her eyes and she sees in her imagination the perfect home, but then when she opens her eyes, there's the actual process of buying the home, of gathering the equipment, the arduous labor of constructing, of renovating, of working. The Adam Kadmon is the way the home exists within the imagination and desire of the person before the person has the home. When you think of your perfect home, that is the Adam Kadmon experience. And then there's going to be the actual process, going back to the analog, the actual process of creation from infinity all the way down to the dense matter and physical form, eventually culminating in this world here and now, in the house that we live in. So I believe that will, that desire, that imagination is a great metaphor for what God did and sees within our potential. It's God's imagination for our potential. Now, the reality is that sometimes we dream a particular home, but then the home we have may not be the home we dream of. It's a problem in marriage as well. Because what lives in the primordial is still just imagination. It still has to get through the other levels. But it's important to remember that we, and for that matter, everybody else, including our spouses, live in a primordial likeness of the Creator. And maybe at some times, people's actions don't reflect this basic truth. And there's a moment of not living up to their highest physical, to their highest emotional, to their highest mental or spiritual potential. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yet, as observers, we're always presented with a choice. Once again, remember, at every situation, in every circumstance, we are going to be presented with a choice. We can either choose to look at the externals, or we can look deeper in order to see that others exist as they exist within the Adam Kadmon, in their perfect and their noble potential. Think about it. Imagine if you looked at everyone. Instead of looking at the external, you could say, you and I, we have the same source. We are both the Adam Kadmon. We both have a primordial state. We both have a potential that is the likeness of our Creator. So yeah, maybe you've gotten into whatever you've gotten into. Maybe life has thrown you a curveball or 2 or 10 or 50. But you can get back to your source. You have within you a perfect and noble potential. You can imagine during my time as a prison chaplain, I use this analogy quite a bit. Just because you're sitting in prison, and we're all in prison in our own way, we're imprisoned by something that's blocking us, something that's stopping us from achieving our potential. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's emotional, but we all have some type of prison. And we have to turn to that part of us that's in prison and say, you are not in prison, you are free. You have a primordial likeness to your Creator. And according to Kabbalah, observing people in the image of their potential and believing in people because of their primordial root actually helps reveal this potential and roots. By you looking at them that way, by you believing in them that way, you help realize that potential. You're actually helping them. If you love them, if you care about them, look at them that way because you will be helping them that way. And this is what the Alter Rebbe was saying when he said, I see everyone as they exist within the Adam Kadmon. He saw them simultaneously as they were and as they were meant to be. It's okay to see someone as they are, but we also have to see them in their YECHIDAH state. We also have to see them in their Adam Kadmon state. We also have to see them in their potential, because that's the way they were meant to be. The more we believe in people, the more those people believe in themselves. The more we believe in the people we love, the more they will believe in themselves. Somebody says it doesn't work if the other doesn't want to achieve the potential. Well, maybe we didn't believe in them enough. Maybe we enabled them instead of believing in them. The two are not the same.
And isn't it almost irrelevant what the other, if the other person is interested in this potential or not? Because if we're seeing them in fullness, their choices aren't relevant.
That's right. Our job is not to be them. It's just to see them in their potential state. Don't live for them. Don't live as them. See them for who they are and who they could be.
Yeah, we can do that, but then we still live in a finite world where the reality of life is that even if we want to see their full potential, their actions may turn day to day completely insane.
No one's saying that their actions may not be good, and that there may be that we live in a real world. What we're saying is also there needs to be moments where we can see them in their potential state. The Alter Rebbe didn't say, I only see you in your potential state. The Alter Rebbe said, I see you as an Adam Kadmon, which means I see you simultaneously as you are and as you're meant to be. We live in reality, and we live in a world of which, and by us being able to see, by saying that we can see your spark, there's a beautiful, beautiful light within you. And I don't know if it's the right thing to say, I wish it would shine a little more. I believe it's shining. We need to have that positive feeling. It's hard. It's hardest to have this feeling towards the people that we're closest to. To have a feeling like that for a random person on the street is easier. But the person who we love and the person we're closest to, it's hard. It's hard to see him in that state. But the Alter Rebbe was not talking about random people. The Alter Rebbe was talking about people that he saw. Seeing them in the potential, seeing them for who they were meant to be. Cheryl, please. L'chaim.
I want to go back to before your analogy of the imagination of building the perfect house, because you were talking about the YECHIDAH state being the harmony of the creator and the creation. So us being one with our creator in the perfect. You used a lot of words like perfect, which we know doesn't exist in our finite world. So that analogy of designing that perfect house, then all of a sudden you open your eyes and the hinges are on backwards, or it's not the right finish, or the drywall has a wrinkle. I mean, our finite life is never perfect that way.
Cheryl, if you didn't have that imagination of the perfect house, imagine what your house would really be like.
Well, I wanted to go back before the analogy, because your definition, to me, at least in prior classes, sounded like the definition of death,
Hmm.
being
But what if
one with
it's-
the
what if
creator,
it's the-
conscious, physical, all that.
You know what the opposite of death is?
Well, I would say life, just because I don't have another answer.
The opposite of death is what King David says in the Psalm, the valley of the shadow of death. You know what the valley of the shadow of death, what King David is referring to? The birth canal.
Oh. Wow.
The opposite of that moment of death. You see, it's so interesting that we often, because our society, and we can't take that away from us because it's the way we're raised. We're raised with this initial, like, the news is negative, and we kind of go, we all do this. We go to this natural negative state. But imagine if, and this is a different conversation because we can go off on a tangent here, but just to answer or to clarify what you're saying, Cheryl, is it's so easy to look at death when really we should be looking at the birth canal, which has within it the potential for life. Do you know how many complications can happen? A doctor will tell you how dangerous the birth canal is, but that is the moment, the greatest moment. That is the moment of which a child is born, and that child is filled with the potential for anything. That's the kind of imagination we need to see when we look at an individual. You have within you the potential for anything. You have within you ayin. Oh, you decided to be a yesh? You decided to be a something? Your ego took over and started ego edging God out? That's what it stands for? Your yesh took over, and all of a sudden you became a something, and you lost your potential for anything. You lost your ayin. Okay, well, let's get back to your ayin state. I know you're feeling down. I know you're depressed. You're depressed because you have too much yesh. You've built too much something into your life. You're not a something. You're much more than a something. Stop limiting yourself to being an ego. Stop limiting yourself to being a something. Be an ayin. Be the potential for anything. Be an Adam Kadmon. Look at yourself in your potential state. That's what we're saying. Abba.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I hope it's okay if I share something personal. I think it fits in with this so well. It's cosmic. A friend of mine just died a couple days ago. A friend of 35
Sorry.
years.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's okay if I start to tear up. It's okay, because that's me releasing emotions. So I'm good. Friend of 35 years, family's very close. This person in direct correlation to Alessandra, I think what you were talking about, this person who I love dearly started making choices that were very destructive and started to affect our lives in a crazy, unsafe way. And so we had to remove ourselves from that equation. And I think that was about 12 years ago. So I hadn't seen her in that long, and she died suddenly. Here's what's blowing my mind is my husband and I were talking about how when someone dies, like her body was laying there in whatever they call it, like wake or something, where they have the body out. And in those
Not the
moments
Jewish
when
way.
we see no, definitely was not. definitely was not the Jewish way.
Well, I'm saying, but I'm just
It was a
making a
Vedic.
statement. Making a statement because it's really, we honor the body much more than to show it off like that.
That's good. That's how I wish to be. Anyway, so my husband and I were talking about how interesting it is in death when we start to consider the life. We really don't talk about their failings, and the person does not become the sum of their choices anymore, good, bad, whatever. What we see, and in that moment it struck me in particular, is we see that beautiful soul as their true potential, without judgment, without, oh, they did this to me, they did that to me. And it's almost heartbreaking to me that we kind of only do that in death as a society, right? Otherwise, it's really hard to forgive people of their shortcomings or how they've hurt you or their choices. So thank you, Rabbi. This teaching today was.
Thank you, Chava. I could not have explained it better. It's so true. We go to Shivas and it's very hard, and everyone's talking about how amazing this person was. And we know during their lifetime, there were moments. There's an old saying, there's two Torah portions that are right next to each other, and they're often read together. The portions of Achrei Mot and Kedoshim. And if you just, for those of you who know Hebrew, Achrei Mot Kedoshim, if you put them together, after death, everything is holy. All of a sudden, which is beautiful on its own, and I'm not taking away from that. And I think, Chava, you're not either taking away from that. But I think how amazing would it be if we could look at people during their lifetime in that same way, to see them in their Yechidah state and to see past their failings. And I know it's hard because very often we're talking about people who have affected us. Those issues, those nefesh, ruach, and neshama issues have really, really affected us. So we're asking something very hard. We're asking ourselves to look past perhaps some of the most difficult things that we've experienced in our life as a result of those people. But we have to remember, the same way, unfortunately, we remember that after they pass away, we have to remember that they have this Yechidah within them. We have to sometimes remember that we have this Yechidah within us. Sometimes we're really hard on ourselves for no reason. Well, for a reason. We're focusing on nefesh and ruach. But sometimes we need to be a little nicer to ourselves and see the Yechidah within us. I want to just go one step further, and then we'll go to questions and our takeaways. All 5 rungs, the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, the chaya, yechidah, all 5 rungs are interwoven with each other. All aspects of the self are one. They constitute a singular totality of beingness. I think one way to understand the emergence of the individualized aspects of the soul, each one that we've outlined, is to compare them to the act of human creation. We kind of touched on this, but let's go a step further. To compare them to birth. The higher reaches of the soul would be equated with the umbilical cord, still very much connected with the mother's womb, the source of the child's creation. The more particularized elements of the soul would be similar to the actual fetus itself. Although it's somewhat separate, although it's somewhat independent, it's still connected via the cord with its source. In fact, the fetus's very existence and nourishment is dependent upon the mother. The deepest level of the soul, the YECHIDAH, would be the child's potential in the mind of the parent. The way the creator or the parent and their creation, children are still connected in the co-creation of the same reality, even after the child is born. Just to give you some background on this, according to Kabbalah, the semen is formed from the thought of the father. So therefore, the child lives within its chachma, within its potential state in a world of thought, and will always have that level of co-creation within them their entire lives, which is why one of the things that we try to teach men who are a little more connected and spiritual, if I have an opportunity to someone who can connect to this, I'll teach them how important it is to have proper thoughts during conception. To not think about other things, to be totally focused on what you're doing. And it's hard. I know that we live in an ADD world, and I've had to have these conversations with men over the years, and how important it is for them to be totally focused, because that conception, that thought is such a powerful thought. And that's the thought that's going to create the child. And the entire child's being is going to be connected. It's the potential of what's going to become the actual as the fetus forms within the mother. That's why, for those of you who want to connect this to the Sefirot, that's why we say that the Chachma is masculine and the Bina is feminine. The greatest example for the Chachma being masculine and the Bina being feminine is that the Chachma is the potential state, and gestation is Bina. And Dat is the child being born. It's the culmination of the Chachma and the Bina. Anyway, I'm going all over the place today, I know. But I just want to finish this one thought on YECHIDAH. YECHIDAH is the inner space where the infinite and the finite merge, where they are undistinguishable and one. And yet, while the nefesh, or as philosophers have phrased it, the vegetative, is the furthest removed from its source, it is still part of the link, and it's still connected to the source of all life. That's what YECHIDAH is. Questions? Okay, no questions. Let's hear the nuggets. Jill, we'll start with you. And then you
Thank
can pass
you.
it on.
Wow. This was an amazing class. I think my nugget is to see the YECHIDAH in everyone, and then especially or as equally to see it within ourselves. I know that is a very big challenge for me to see something like that. So Thank you for this class. It was wonderful. I'll pass it to Alessandra.
Thank you, Jill. What I retain the most is the ein state. I say ein. Ein for me is more the I. Ein is the lack, or rather the potential for something. And I love that, because that reminds us that we're never finished. You know, we can always reach more potential regardless of where we're at in our life. So, you know, when people say don't look at the empty side, rather look at the full, like the half full part of the glass, well, there's still the other half to be filled. So I actually love it. I will do my very best to spend as much time in an ein state. That's my take on this today, and I will pass it on to Ilana.
I don't really have too much to add. I just maybe got a little bit confused about the YECHIDAH, because the YECHIDAH is the understander, and I don't know if we can ever really reach that level, you know? Anyway. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that. Otherwise, I'll pass it to Cheryl. I have to think about it.
Thank you, Alana. I don't have an answer to that either. And I ditto what Jill and Alessandra said. My takeaway today was when you asked me the question, Rabbi, of what's the opposite of death? And it would have been an immediate response. If it was a Jeopardy question, I would probably say, what is life? And then you went on to change it, that it's the birth canal or the shadow of death. And I'm just pondering on that today, just because it was kind of a little mind-blowing, and as was the whole class. So that's why I, like Julian, would like to listen to it again, because you really gave us a lot of powerful information today. And I do thank you for that. Parrish, are you there?
Yes, I am here. So,
Okay.
hi all. Sorry, it's a bit dark. I'm in my bedroom on my phone. So, the whole YECHIDAH thing, I believe I already do that naturally. I'm very spiritual, and last week Rabbi said level 5, 6. So, it's a great to understand it from the Kabbalah point of view. But for me, you also mentioned the umbilical cord. When you actually rise above and become elevated with YECHIDAH, you are able to travel, as the Rabbi said, to different realms, including some of the Sephira. You are still attached to that biblical cord. This is from my understanding of it, but it is so great to actually listen to where all these things I've been doing most of my life spiritually actually originate from. So I really appreciate the whole understanding of YECHIDAH, and I hope I got that right, Rabbi, in the way I've explained it in my context. And I appreciate the classes. Who we got? Fahmi. You there, Fahmi?
Yes, thank you. So I will try to give an answer to what so if like an infinite thing meets a finite thing, like they will meet in a frontier, right? Like does it mean like they meet in some kind of infinite dimensional frontier? I mean, it must be something which is finite, maybe bounded, you know. So I have my lawyer in Tunisia. He's the last Jewish lawyer in Tunisia. So when I met him, I told him, you know, Eve, how can you live there? These are like wicked people, you know, like no kosher, nothing, you know, how can you do it? So he told me, Fahmi, you know, you have to be like a spoon. So a spoon, if you want to eat, the spoon is bended so you can scoop with it. This is how we should be. We have to find the good in people. It doesn't mean we have to be perfect. We have to be like this word, we have to be, but at the end result, if you want to see the good in people, we have to be in some kind, not perfect, but so bended, so flexible. So this allows you to scoop, if possible, any good things from them. This is how I see it. And he was right. I mean, he teach me that. So if you are in a finite dimensional thing, you cannot be infinite. You have to be finite. You have to be like, but you can be finite, but the goal is still the same, to elevate others. So who is left? Jill? No? Then
Chava didn't go.
Haba, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, sorry I missed everybody's nuggets. I'm gonna have to catch up on the recording. I'm in the mountains. My nugget was the whole class. It couldn't have been Hashem. I'm just blown away, and I needed this so much. So my nugget was just every drop of wisdom that you shared with us today. Thank you, Rabbi.
Chava, that's too easy. Come on, you have to give us something.
No,
Laughing.
I'll be again. I will be, I don't mind sharing personal things here. And I was experiencing just soul wrenching regret when my friend died, because, we all do the woulda, coulda, shouldas, and in death, it's very final for us on this side. And, the thing that never left, my love for my sister, I'm going to call her my sister, is that place that I saw her true potential and her true self, and I never stopped loving her. And it's comforting to know that is the reality. The reality isn't the choices that we make in life. It's the ability to love and respect each other's potential. And in that light, she's beautiful. Always, always beautiful.
Separate the person from their choices. Yes. Separate the person from their choices. I know we have MJ and Julian, I believe, are the two that are left that haven't spoken yet. MJ?
Yes. This class was phenomenal. The moment you started to just discourse about primordial existence and all that, okay? Obviously, I need to not only listen to it again, but get the words properly. I don't know, it just makes sense. And there's a few things you said, to see a person in that state, or and I love that you would see someone like this, as opposed to, or I think the word you used is simultaneously. It's that word there, to kind of have some things that coexist. I think you have a quote like that. To be mature is to have two opposite to coexist this way.
That's
and
right.
I think it's the same thing here. It's to realize the person is who she is, but to still have this sort of, I don't know what, but to see the person as the person could be, his potential or her potential. And I found that so, I don't know, it's really great. I mean, it would make a better world, I think, if we were all looking at people this way, if we were all approach people, and even people themselves, they would be more kind or more believing in themselves. I'm not sure how to express all that, but this was absolutely phenomenal, amazing. My struggle personally always is that intellectually I can understand, but then what does that look like in daily life? Like, how do I don't want to use the word manifest, because I'm just not really comfortable with that, but But that's actually the word. How do I do that? How do I wear the proper glasses? And I'm just actually, I would like some more readings. Like if you have any, like not article per se, but reading, just so I could, about this primordial man or Adam, and I'm not pronouncing that well. Sorry
Look it
about
up. Look it up on Chabad.org. Look it up around. It's the Adam Kadmon.
that. How do we write that? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna look it up.
And I have so many thoughts on what you said, MJ. You know, it's such an important place to be. We don't have to agree with another person to accept them.
Yeah.
We don't have to, you know, so often we look at people and we experience their lives through a very, very vain state. And this idea is looking at someone for the potential of who they are, but also, and using that word also. One of the things that I could say, you're talking about practical.
Yes.
Practically, start using the word also. Also, you have a soul. Also, you're a good person. Also, yes, we're not being not in reality. I know you did me wrong. I know that you messed up, and I am a result of that. But also, you're a good person, and I will separate your deed from who you are.
Okay, we need to have more class about this.
Yes, I agree.
Like seriously, I need to hear it 2 times again, just so I could actually, like, it stays.
I am in no way a person of means, nor do I want to be a person of means. But there was a point in my life, one point in my life, where my wife and I had done something, and we had made a very good choice. And as a result of that choice, we ended up coming into about $25,000, which for some people is not a lot of money. For us, it was the first time in our life that we had a few dollars. And that day, somebody came over to me, and it's never happened to me before or after, and asked me for a loan. And I don't know why they would ask me for this, of $25,000. And they needed it just for a short period of time. And I said, it's meant to be. It's really meant to be. And I took the money. It was the day that I got it. I took the money and I handed it over to them. And I said, yeah. The person never paid it back. And somebody who knew the situation asked me, how can you even look at them in the face? How can you even look at them in the face? It's the only money you ever had. Look at what that could have done for your family. You could have put it away maybe for retirement. You could have done something good. You could have given it to charity. But this person took it as a small loan. And this, I'm talking about, the story happened over 10 years ago. And I said, I have learned, if there's something, I have to live by what I learn. And that's a hard thing. You learn something and put it into action. Well, this was my opportunity to put what I learned into action, being able to separate the person from the deed. I'm upset with what that person did, but I still love that person because they have a great potential. And I hope and I pray, whenever I think about that person, I pray for them, that they're able to I don't even worry about the money. The money is between them and God at this point. Even from the day that I realized that he wasn't going to pay it back, it became between him and God. But because money, what is money already? It's just something you use in this world. It's arbitrary. It doesn't really exist. It's a means by which we navigate this world. And this world is the world of falsehood, so who cares? But it bothered me. And so therefore, I have to continuously separate the person from the deed, the person from their action. And it's hard, but I think this is what it is. We have within us an infinite potential. Everyone, and even the people who do us wrong, have within them infinite potential. And like what Chava said, if we can take a look at them and see beyond the mistakes that they've made and the mistakes they've made to us, and see they still have a soul, I believe that we help them realize that. And maybe we can't make choices for them. We can't change who they are. And Hashem, believe me, does not remain Hashem does not remain a Baal Chov. Hashem is never in debt. So you give over your issues to God, God will not be in debt. And unfortunately, they will have to live by the results of the choices they've made in this world, having nothing to do with you. But from your perspective, they have an infinite potential. And that's what's important. Julian hasn't been able to say anything, and we're already way over time. So Julian says, I have 2 remaining questions. Number 1 is, you said that YECHIDAH was the overseer and the experiencer, but you also said that of Chaya. So Chaya is separate from us. YECHIDAH is when the 3, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, and Chaya are integrated within us. So yes, so Chaya is the overseer and the experiencer. But YECHIDAH is the experiencer and the experience. The overseer and what is overseen. It's how we integrate. That is without, and that is which is within. And number 2 question, isn't the reason we don't look at our people as good potential things, except for the funeral, is not to inflate the person's ego. Let them worry about inflating their own ego. And I agree, everyone should be very careful not to inflate their own ego, but we should be building people up. We should be the ones that are really focusing and thinking good and saying good and experiencing good about others, all people.
But I mean, there's no for answering that. But that when we think about saying a compliment to people, is that not the only thing that stops us? Because we think to ourselves, if I say that to them, they might get too big for themselves. I don't know the right word, but too egotistical.
So that's what I'm saying, Julian. It's a thought, and I'm not saying it's a wrong thought, but I think in our world, we have to be thinking and saying and doing good for others. So we shouldn't be calculated. I wish we were calculated in the gossip that we said about people the same way we're calculated about the good we say to them.
It's interesting what you said, because I don't know if it's ever been tried out. I think it depends on the individual people.
Yeah, it's look, you could take it or leave it. I maybe what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you. That's fine. You're your own person. But I think that in our world today, we need to lift others up much more, because we're very easy to put them down. Very, very easy to be critical of them and to put them down, and it's our job to lift them up.
That does make sense. We're in a different mental state, especially after COVID.
Appreciate you. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. For those of you who are leaving, I wish you a good week, and we will move on to Talmud.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.